Hi, I'm Dan Welch with Emerging Civil War. On the morning of September 17, 1862, as the Battle of Antietam grew in size, scale, and scope, more units for the Union and Confederate armies were fed into the battle. One such unit leading the attack of the Union Army's 12th Corps was George Sears Greene. George Sears Greene would be the second oldest Union officer here on the battlefield that morning at the age of 61. Greene had had a long and interesting life before arriving here to the rolling terrain around me on the morning of September 17th. Greene had grown up in Rhode Island. He had been part of an illustrious family that had served the United States in many ways, including had been descended of one of the people that had actually founded the colony of Rhode Island itself. Greene had always dreamed and had been slated to go off to college, but family financial misfortunes had led Greene to instead take a job in New York City. It wasn't long after Greene had moved there and had taken this position that he would be offered a spot and chance to attend West Point. Upon his graduation, Greene, meeting and falling in love with the sister of one of his classmates, would be married and eventually have 3 children before being sent to Fort Sullivan in Maine. Tragedy would strike Greene, however, during his time there, as all 3 of his children and his wife would die during his service at Fort Sullivan in Maine. Greene would turn to education and studying to deal with his loss and grief, and would go on to earn many different degrees, including engineering and law. By the time of the American Civil War, Greene would throw his services to the Union and the Union cause after having been an officer in the United States military for so long. Greene would eventually rise through the ranks to command a division in the 12th Corps here on the morning of September 17, 1862. Greene's division would advance across these fields at approximately 9:30, 9:45 on the morning of September 17, 1862, behind me. Eventually, Greene's men would make their way towards the Dunkard Church and the West Woods by 10 a.m., where they were to encounter Confederates stoutly positioned in that vicinity. For the next 2 hours, Greene men would hold this penetration 200 yards into the Confederate position, the farthest penetration by Union soldiers on the morning of September 17th. But by 12 o'clock, Greene's men would be outflanked on both sides of his position. Greene had held the assumption that his right flank was protected by that of John Sedgwick's officers and men. But Sedgwick had been routed from the position earlier in the morning, exposing Greene's right flank. And by 12:30, Greene's men would lose their hold in the West Woods, being outflanked on both sides. Greene's men would come tumbling back out of the West Woods, leaving behind their wounded and dead around the Dunkard Church, back over the turnpike, across the fields behind me, and towards a position they had started from just 2 hours earlier. But this would not be the last time that Greene and his men would see combat. Greene would continue to serve in the 12th Corps and would famously defend Culp's Hill on the evening of July 2nd, 1863, in the fields of Gettysburg.